Okay, so welcome back to the final 5. Yeah, if you watch Galactica. Okay, so I might talk a little bit more about these because these are my absolute favorites, but I will try to keep this in about the 10 to 15 minute range. So, my number 5 is from Ludonaut and Asmodee games, designed by Cedric Chaboughy, and this artist was Vincent Dutray. Sorry, I'm probably mispronouncing these, but I guess it's better to say them than not to say them. So, that's Lewis and Clark, The Expedition. This is a pretty heavy game in some sense, and not in another. It's about the Lewis and Clark expeditions, which started from St. Louis 1804 or something like that, when Napoleon sold some parts to the USA, and they actually discovered a lot more land with the help of the Native Americans, such as the Sacagawea Indian guide they had. And it's basically a deck builder or hand builder, because you always have all cards in your hand, mixed with worker placement, resource management, and stuff like that. And also it's a race game. You're basically racing this river or this track. There are mountain spaces and stuff like that, and you have to get to Halifax, the end point first. I think it was Halifax. Sorry, and actually it's from 1 to 5 players. I would never play it with more than 3 because it's very long, but the reason it's on my first one-player list is because the one-player variant is oddly fun. I don't know why it is. When I read it, I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. But when I tried it, I actually have played the solo game almost 30 times or so, always trying to beat my score. The solo game works that there is like a AI player which always moves one space on the track, so it's very easy to handle this, but there's no over upkeep to handle, but you can always change the difficulty by putting him further ahead in the beginning. I think the hard was 7 spaces ahead, and I think I won by giving him an 11 space head start, so there's some challenge for you. But the game actually is very fun because your characters have different powers. You can get more cards to your starting deck, and the ones that are available change every game. There's like 40 to 50 cards or so, so every game is different because some of the cards you usually use are just not available, so you have to come up with different strategies and notice that, okay, this is cool and this is very fast, and okay, this doesn't work at all, and stuff like that. And you have to be very tight with your resource management, because the more stuff you carry in your canoes, the more it will slow you down. Or you can try to gather a lot and then do one big move, or try to move every turn quite a little bit. There are different combinations of things. So the solo game is fun. I'm not sure. I probably would like to play this more with 2 or 3 players, but the solo game is just fun to try to beat your score and try to give that one more space head start and see if you can still beat the guy. So highly recommend, even in multiplayer, Lewis and Clark, The Expedition. Okay, so that was my number 5, and now on to number 4. This is from Demon Games and designed by Ignacy Trevicek. It's Robinson Crusoe, Adventures on the Cursed Island. This is a Eurogame cooperative worker placement with one of the strongest themes I know in games. And it's extremely brutally hard. I have beaten a few of the scenarios, but only by a margin, a very small margin. You can play it from 1 to 4 players. Actually, the 1-player game works great, and you can actually control multiple characters if you want, and it's not a problem in this game because all of the characters have 2 actions. You can think of them as afternoon or evening when they do work around the island. And so it's not too hard, but the 1 player you get to play with Friday and the dog. They can help you, so you get more actions, but it's very hard still. There are 6 scenarios in the game, which all feel pretty much totally a different game. So I think I would buy this game even if it only had the first scenario, because all of them feel like a total game inside a game. And so they are very thematic. One of the greatest elements in this game is when you see an when you get an event and yeah, you read something like let's say you are building something and you hit your finger with the hammer. Okay, so now you have to decide, sometimes, not always, do you take care of the problem now or do you see what happens? And you shuffle. If you don't do anything now, or if you can't do anything now, it just goes to the event deck, it's shuffled there, and if it comes around later, you will read the bottom part, and in this case you could get an infection in your hand or something like that, and it's bad. Or you might get lucky and it doesn't come up in the end at all, or it could be a good thing. Obviously probably not in this case, but in some of the cases it can actually be a good thing. And also I never read the bottom part when I decide, so I just read the top and see what happens, and then I think, could this be good or bad, and what do I want to do, and then we decide, or I decide alone and either shuffle it or try to manage it now. But yeah, so very thematic. There are many scenarios, more downloadable, and very high quality components. The board is one of the nicest boards I've seen, and just all around a home run. Robinson Crusoe. Okay, so now we are on to my top 3, which was actually still the easiest to pick. These 3 games came to my mind exactly right away, and I knew that those were the top 3. So there's a bit of a gap, not to say that Robinson or any of the games is bad, but these 3 are my favorite solo experiences. So let's start with the oldest game on the list. Actually, it was published in the 80s or 70s even. And it's from Yistari Games, Sherlock Holmes, the Consulting Detective. And this is barely a game, I could say. It doesn't have any cards or dice or a game board or anything. There's just 10 cases, some newspaper articles, a phone directory, and well, that's about it. And a map of London, so a small map of London. And basically, you go through the cases, you get some introduction to what has happened, and then you just decide what you want to do. Do you want to visit the coroner and see what he has dug out about the body, or visit the crime scene and see if there's something that points you somewhere, or visit the widow of the murdered man and see what she has to say, or whatever, and you decide, and then you just keep doing these and just like use paper and notes and put things and just try to make your conclusions about what has happened and why. And once you feel you are complete, you can then end the game and read the questions in the end and answer them and see how you did. You can actually even score your game or stuff like that and compare your score to Sherlock Holmes, but I think that misses most of the game, because if you do that, first of all you will lose, and second of all you will lose horribly, and third of all you will miss a lot of the experience, because if you do that and you get the answers quickly, you haven't read about probably 70% of the casebook, which has very nice side plots, side quests and side information, and which really draw you into the story. So I do count my score every time, but I'm not really thinking about it during the game, that if I do this now, this might be like not helping me, so I don't really think that way. I try to play this in the dark. It's in Finland, so it's always dark, that's nice, but with some candles and a glass of scotch, and set the mood, and just late at night, and just delve through the book for good 3-4 hours and enjoy. It's like reading a very good book, but one you can actually participate in. Highly recommend. I think they are doing some reprints, and maybe some of the expansions are reprinted soon. I've heard some things about it, but I still have a few cases left myself, which is nice, but I'm actually dreading the fact that someday they will end. But there are a lot of fan scenarios or anything, so check out Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. Okay, sorry, there was some mishap with the camera and I lost some data, so I will only re-record these last two games and I can actually maybe talk a little bit more about them. So sorry for the cut there after the third one, but now we are on to the top two. And my number two is actually a solo war game from Dan Version Games from his Commander series called Field Commander Napoleon. It is basically goes through Napoleon's military campaign in 11 campaigns that you can play through solo, and the enemy is handled by an AI charts or AI like what maybe dice rolls or stuff like that, which work okay. And the game has very high quality components. The counters are very thick and glossy finish on them, and very nice, like 500 counters, and 7 mounted maps with glossy finish, very high quality sturdy maps. And I've been looking for this game for quite a while and finally found a reasonable price, still high price copy from UK in February from BGT Marketplace, and especially the shipping, because this is one very heavy box. So got my copy and I'm happy. What you can do in this game is you can play from 1796 campaign all the way to Waterloo, and you can play the campaigns however you like. You can play them through as a campaign and you can't lose in the beginning, and at the end you can score your points, or you can just play what you like, pick which you like and stuff like that. And all the scenarios feel very different. So there might be, like in the Spanish campaign, there are enemies popping up everywhere, or in the Russia the winter is killing your troops and you are losing a lot of troops or when you move and do things. And the Egypt has different things, and all of them pretty much feel pretty unique. And in the beginning you have to formulate a plan, and yeah, at the beginning is always the same, but I think there's still a replayability here, because the outcome of even one battle might change your plans quite a bit. And of course the AI movements are also sort of automated, sorry, not automated, actually like randomized, so they don't always do the same things, so there's replayability there also. And let's face it, this is just historic, like gripping theme, historic feeling in a box, and yet again I love history, so that's the first big plus. And also there's like 2 games in this game. First one is you actually do the big strategic decisions on the map where you move your troops around, and then when you start actually battle, you move on to this smaller battle board where you put your troops in column or line formation and front or back row, and you can start moving them by giving them orders. Maybe Napoleon is in the battle, so you will have maybe some inside counters which let him like send cavalry to do a sweep from the back or stuff like that, which are very thematic and cool and really make you feel like a boss as a Napoleon. And all these things feel very thematic and historically, like give that historic feeling. But yeah, there's a lot of game in the box, so if you can find a copy, I think this was reprinted now 2015, so it should be available. I've heard some component problems from BGG on the reprint, but not sure if it's just random people. So if you can find the older 2011 copy, which I have, it's great. and I don't think the reprint is going to be much worse. But yeah, that's my number 2, Field Commander Napoleon. And then it's on to the number 1, which was easily number 1. There was no contention there, and that's Vlaada Chivato's Mage Knight, the board game. This is actually one of the games in the list that I only actually play solo. I have played a few multiplayer games, and 2-player is okay if you have a friend that actually knows the game, and in cooperative mode I think it's fun and I would play it again, but still solo is where this is at its best. This is basically a sandbox role-playing game in a box. You can play different scenarios, mix things. You start as a lowly, puny mage knight with little abilities. You can barely knock down an orc, but in the end, if you usually anyway, you start to get extremely powerful, and you take down these cities in one attack with all their attackers in there, and kill dragons on the left hand on the way there. And there's deck building, hand management, and day and night cycles, spells, artifacts, which are so lovely. They are super brutally efficient or powerful, the artifacts or spells, but they are not easy to get, and spells require mana to use and stuff like that, so they're still kind of balanced, and the opponents get very hard in the end. The dragons are very hard, so I've never felt like, even though I was very powerful, I never felt I was overpowerful. And if you do, there's very many easy ways to start ramping up the difficulty if you want that, but I like it as the normal difficulty. Usually it still feels fine because it feels like an adventure, and even when you're setting up the game, you know you are in for some great fun. And there are a lot of scenarios in the game box already, and more in BGG. The expansions, the first expansion, The Lost Legion, is probably my favorite or best expansion ever made to any board game I know. And it actually completes the game. You don't need it, don't get me wrong. The Mage Knight base game is more than enough for a lot of gameplay, but the Lost Legion just makes it a complete game and makes all the different choices viable. What can you say? I like the components, even though the minis aren't that impressive, but they are cool. They are pre-painted, so they are okay. It could be nicer, but they work because it's not really the minis you are looking for. And the enemies are just cheats, so there are no minis other than your hero mini and the cities here. The card art is nice. I don't know what to say, I just love this game. There's actually a funny super epic conquest scenario on BGG. From, I don't remember the user, but you can find it under Mage Knight, and it actually combines all the tiles from the base game and the Lost Legion expansion to one mega game, and I've actually played through that game for 7 or so times, and it actually takes 3 times, actually 3 games of this into one, and slows down the leveling and all that thing. And it takes about like 6-7 hours for me to play alone through, and it's just smiling and grinning all the time, and it's great fun. So be sure to check that out if you have Mage Knight and the expansion and a lot of time to play something. So what can I say? The best of the best. If you like role-playing games or fantasy spells and stuff like that, be sure to check out Mage Knight, the board game. Okay, so now we finally got to the end. Sorry if some of the explanations were too long, but anyway, give me feedback, and if you want to see some of those games more closely, maybe a playthrough or review or some strategic things or stuff like that, feel free to request, and we'll see what I can do. But until next time, see you.